everyone, and welcome to Native Voices. I am Jeff Warren, and I am the current president of the Columbia College Foundation. Tonight, we will be exploring today's Native American experience. Our speakers include nationally acclaimed Calaveras County author Tommy Orange, and a regional panel of spiritual, cultural, and literary Native leaders. Tonight's event is presented by the Columbia College Foundation as part of its community lecture series. This event is co-hosted by the Columbia College Cultural Enrichment Committee. I would now like to introduce Columbia College Counselor Stephanie Beaver Guzman, who will serve as our moderator this evening. Stephanie?
Thank you, Jeff. Hey, young, and welcome. Before we continue, please join me in recognizing that we are meeting on the indigenous lands of the Central Sierra Miwuk peoples, and in acknowledging all of the American Indian and indigenous peoples and communities who have been or have become a part of these lands in the Sierra Nevada foothills. This land acknowledgement is one small act that we can all do that fosters a good relationship with and recognition of the Native people who have come before us and who are still here. My name is Stephanie Beaver Guzman, and I'm an enrolled member of the Hoopa Valley tribe. I'm also married to a member of the Tuolumne Band of Miwuk Indians. I am a faculty counselor here at Columbia College. I'm also a doctoral student at CSU Stanislaus, researching the experiences of a Native American female faculty as they navigate personal, professional, and tribal contexts. I also teach ethnic studies at Stan State. I'm excited to welcome you to our campus's third Native Voices event. The college is eager to continue building partnerships with our local tribes and our broader Native communities. We're also eager to educate our local community about Native-related topics that have been and are often excluded from our formal educational systems. These Native Voices events that we've been holding for the last few years have created small but significant opportunities for visibility of Indigenous people, matters, and education from Native people themselves. Tonight, we are so lucky to have 3 community members joining us. And we'll shortly introduce them. Now let me just change my screen here. So we have Bill Leonard, who's Southern Sierra Miwuk, Tommy Orange, Cheyenne and Arapaho, Carlos Geisdorff, Tuolumne Band of Miwuk, and myself, an enrolled member of the Hoopa Valley tribe. And before I transition it to Bill, I would like to open with a song. And this song I learned when I was sitting on a Native woman's drum, Buffalo Woman Sings, with a Native women's group, Turtle Woman Rising. And this is a Cherokee morning song. And although I'm not Cherokee and it's definitely not the morning, this song is often used to start ceremonies. You can start the day with this song, just kind of opening up the day and asking Creator to come in and help you in that day, or helping guide your ceremony. And so even though it is the evening and we are a mix of different tribal peoples, I wanted to kind of just do what we would normally do if we were having a ceremony. And so that's just kind of hoping to be in a good way for the rest of this evening tonight. And I learned this song at that drum from my auntie Ellie Painted Crow. Wendy-ah-ho, Wendy-ah-ho, Wendy-ah, Wendy-ah, Wendeya, ho 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 ho, hey ho, hey ho, ya ya ya. Wendeya ho, Wendeya ho, Wendeya, Wendeya, ho 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 ho, hey ho, hey ho, ya ya ya. Wendeya ho, Wendeya ho, Wendeya, Wendeya, ho 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 ho, hey ho, hey ho, ya ya ya. Oh, all right, Uncle. You can start anytime you're ready.
Here. Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, so my name is Bill Leonard. I'm with the Southern Sierra Miwuk Nation. And I'm here to talk about our ongoing efforts seeking federal acknowledgement, the struggles we've had, and struggles we've had for the last, since about 1848 with the American government. So 1848 was when the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed. And that's, then the Americans came. It was a pretty tough time. Is that Indians here in Mariposa were declared illegal, could be shot on sight. So we come from that place where we lost a lot of people. This was after our destruction by the Spanish. So we're very fortunate to still be here, along with any other tribes from California. And so at one time, we weren't necessarily Southern, Central, Northern, Coast Miwuk, Plains Miwuk. We were all Miwuk, but the wisdom of anthropologists has divided us up into smaller groups, which makes us like we're separate people. And, you know, through the years of intermarriage and trading, all kinds of interaction with other tribes to the north of us, south of us, we're all pretty much related. So we had treaties signed in 1851 and 52 that directly influenced us, our area here, or people between like the Merced River, the Tuolumne River and the Fresno River on the south. Many of the people were taken to reservations, and the problem was the treaties were never ratified. And so in the early 1900s, there was a lot of our people were told they couldn't live on that land anymore. And so they came higher into the mountains to find a place to live and to survive. So we're looking at the time since that. In the 20s, 30s, and 40s, there were rancherias and other things set up. Allotment land set up for homeless Indians. But that didn't give us any federal status, except that we were Indian and we had allotment land that was in trust. So what we're seeking today is that federal acknowledgement from the government We've been in this process. Well, actually, we started working in this direction in about 1972 when we formed the American Indian Council of Mariposa County. So we still have that nonprofit organization so that we can raise funds to help us out. And in dealing with the officials in Washington, they said, well, who is this American Indian Council? So we came to decide that historically we were Southern Sierra Miwuk. So therefore becomes the title of the Southern Sierra Miwuk Nation. And so that's what we go by in this sense. We've always been Miwuk, but weren't so concerned about if it was Southern or whatever. But so in 1982, we filed a petition with the government to seek this federal acknowledgement. And then we've been in that process ever since. 38, 39 years, somewhere around there, almost 40 years we've been in this process. And it's been a long journey. And sometimes it seems we're not much closer than we started. We've done a lot of research in the beginning years, you know, who would be included in the tribal membership. And so all of those things had to be decided. And so we've got that narrowed down to about 18 to 20 families that were here when the treaties were signed and or are descendants of those that signed these treaties in 1851 and 52. So we are moving forward from there in our, you might say, adversarial relationship with the government. The last 4 years have been a little tough for us with moving forward. A lot of delays and extensions, some for no reason, some because we're, so in 2018, we got congressional help and public help, and we forced them to give us some kind of understanding of where we stood. So they picked, there's 7 criteria, and but they picked one to say that they don't consider us a modern community, and which is crazy. One of the things that creates this problem is our ceremonies and things we do together. We don't have sign-in sheets. We just come and do what we need to do and take care of our business, all our ceremonies that way. We don't take a lot of, we don't take any photographs in any of those. So we did a survey to at least try to get some of our people to say, hey, yeah, we've been attending these ceremonies for years. And we got maybe a third of our membership to do that. Others say, hey, that's none of the government's business. Well, we do. So it makes it difficult in that way. But to show that we're a modern community, we have received letters from other tribes, our relatives that surround us, supporting us and letting the government know that we should be recognized. So, and Tuolumne got us a letter. You know, we've been dealing with Tuolumne since the 70s. They've been helping us, take us under their umbrella and help us with things that we couldn't receive. So you wonder why is this federal acknowledgement important? Well, I got a whole list for you here. I won't go into depth, but we have a web page, which is the Southern Sierra Miwuk Nation.org. And all of the information I'm going to give you plus more is on that web page, and how you can help, what you can do. So that's available there. But basically, one of the critical things is the sovereignty and the self-determination. Our government-to-government relationship, that we are a distinct Indian tribe. And we haven't been able to, we know who we are and our neighbors know who we are, but the government says, oh, we don't know you. So, and the self-determination, you know, to form our own sovereign government and to provide for our people with another thing is that would allow us for land acquisition, which would allow for housing for our people, the ability to have some economic development, to put some of our people to work. The hope is that we could bring some of our families back home, is that here in Mariposa, there aren't any jobs really. You either work for the county, the Park Service, the Forest Service, things like that. And so our young people have been moving away. They can't survive here and provide for their families. So I have 5 children. One of them still lives here, but he has to travel and be gone from home all week to be able to provide for his family. And so we don't get to see each other much because of the distance they have to travel. A couple of them are out of state. Some of them are in Northern California. So all of our families face that. How do we keep our families together? How do we remain a community? How do we take care of each other when everybody has to go other places? So our healthcare, fortunately, we have neighbors like Tuolumne that took us under their umbrella back in the early 70s and have stuck with us ever since. We have help from Jackson and other tribes north. The Chukchansi to the south of us, they help us with a lot of our healthcare, and that we have the ability to at least have a clinic here in Mariposa. We used to travel all the way to Tuolumne Rancheria for all of our services, and very limited. So that's all improving as time goes by, but we don't always have the same say as the federally acknowledged tribes. And so we'd like to be on an equal footing in that way. Not that we'd want to change a whole lot of what's going on, but at least we would have equal say. Indian Child Welfare Act. Fortunately, we live in Mariposa County, and they acknowledge the Indian Child Welfare Act, but we don't have any staff, so it's like we can participate, but we can't afford to hire someone to do this, so it's all volunteers. So we've had a help in that from Picayune Rancheria south of us, and they help us with that a little bit, what they can. Education, to get funding for education. We're not eligible. None of our young people are eligible for that. So it makes it difficult there. We have had quite a few success stories in people finding a way to get their masters and doctorates and move forward. We would just like to be able to have some more. And like I said earlier, we can't afford to have any staffing. So our board of directors does all the work on a volunteer basis. And sometimes that can take 40 hours a week, maybe, if we're lucky. And being more involved in the environmental protection, protection of our cultural sites. Some agencies don't want to deal with us in our own lands here because we're not federally acknowledged. Fortunately, again, we have some of the acknowledged tribes, our neighbors, that come bail us out again. And so it's good to have that cooperation. We would just like to be able to do some of that ourselves. Develop these programs that our people could take care of ourselves a little bit. We've, one of the other things is that we are, this would also allow us to receive funding from the what's it called, the state program, fund set up by the casinos, revenue sharing, and the trust fund. And that would give us a good start on some of this. Right now, we're not eligible. A lot of people think, oh, all the California Indians got casino and they're all doing great. There's about 2/3 of the native Californians are not a member of a federally acknowledged tribe. So there's a big disparity here in California in particular. We're moving forward. So this acknowledgement would do this. And so we try to do a lot of fundraising this last year with the COVID. All of our fundraising efforts have been somewhat stopped, more or less. And so that's kind of where we're at. And I know I only have a short period of time here, so I want to close with, asking for your support. Take a look at our webpage and see what you can do to help. We're always seeking more funding just to keep us going. We have to raise money just to have office space. It's difficult to get grants for that. And, we always have the attorneys, anthropologists, historians. And so that's all about raising money. So take a look at our webpage, see what you can, and you can see how you might be able to help us. But it's also a short introduction to the issues here in California. When, the state says, oh, we're going to make laws to allow you to do, protect your lands, all of those things. Well, when you have to do it with volunteers, it's, makes it a little difficult to get people out there. So that's where we stand today. And just wanted to give you an introduction and help you to understand that there's a lot of difficulties here in California. Not that there aren't across the country, but a lot of the indigenous people here are struggling in the same way we are. And we want some justice for our ancestors, for ourselves. We want a little dignity. We know that, you know, many of the native tribes, they're kind of looked at as second-class citizens. So where does that put us? We don't even fall into that. So what it would do for the spirit of our people is to be able to have that sovereignty and self-determination is really important for our elders, for our young people, for all of those in between, to be able to say, hey, I'm real Indian now. So I thank you for listening, and I will, I guess, have some answer questions as you have some at the end of everything else. Okay.
Thank you, Uncle. Yeah, so if, I do see the questions being put through on the chat feature. So we will hold some of your questions until the end after we hear from all of our speakers. We're going to transition it to Carlos next. But I would like to point out that there are over 220 different tribes across the country who are also pursuing federal acknowledgement or federal recognition. And there are over 55 of those nations within California, just like the Southern Sierra Miwuk Nation that Bill is a part of, who have not yet been recognized by the federal government. So we will transition now to Carlos. So whenever
Hello.
you're ready.
Hello, can you guys hear me all right? All right, good to see you. Good to see you, Bill. Hello, everybody. My name is Carlos Skeesdarf, member of the Tuolumne Band of Miwuk Indians. Work in the Blue House Education Center as a Miwuk language program manager. And we've came a long ways. The language has been around for thousands of years, but we've lost it at different times and different years for different reasons. But the most important thing is that we're now getting it back, and a lot of our people are starting to speak again. The Tuolumne people are bringing that language and keeping that language alive over there on that side of this, the Tuolumne side, the southern side. And then the northern Miwuk people, like he mentioned, we never were these different areas and different dialects. We are one people. And so that's the crazy thing to understand this today. But we're all Miwuk people, and that's what it stands for, meaning you, Me-Wuk, Indian person, Miwuk people, Miwuk, all the people. And it is an oral tradition, and the tradition's alive, and we're very blessed in this day and age right now to where we have so many beautiful singers. We have a lot of dancers. I myself am married 24 plus years. I have 4 daughters. They all started dancing at 6 months old as soon as they could walk. So I'm very lucky to say that. And myself, I didn't start till I was about 6 or 7 years old, was a late bloomer. But I finally figured it out through following the paths of many people. I worked with Bill before, worked with many different people before. And I'm finally in a place right now at 44 or 45 years of age to where I could say I'm finally understanding what I need to be doing in this world, in this life, in this circle of people. And that is to share the language, speak the language, and share it with everybody. Like I said, we're very blessed and very lucky to have what we do have. But at the same time, at the end of the day, we need to be able to make sure that we can speak to our people and share these words. And, you know, when they make it to that next part of their life and they travel on, that we're able to pray for them. And a lot of times when we have our songs, they come to us. Creator gives us these songs to share with people. And that language is there. They say it's in the tummy of the mothers from the life givers, you know, that give life to each and every one of us. And even as my wife had our kids in their tummy, I would speak and sing to their tummy and do whatever I knew how, even if it's just a little bit. It's very important. Like I tell the kids all the time, one push-up is better than no push-ups. So you got to do that. So I want to make sure that I acknowledge people and give thanks, because I didn't get here by myself. There were so many people that paved the way before I got here. Of course, in the ancestral land and the territory that we live, you know, we've moved all around. You know, on my grandfather's side, I come from Molopishmo, over by 6 Mile, where that our cousins are, the Kasori Monono area. And then over on the Groveland side, we come from Piglicu. And my grandmother's Sophia Thompson, Pilikuya, nose stick ornament through her nose. And then once again, my mother and father, who raised me to be, you know, pretty solid little guy, which I'm not a little guy, but I just say that. So anyhow, I want to recognize the 16 elders that started out the language program, you know, early 2000s, and got the from the Tuolumne Band of Miwuk Indians in the tribal community. Want to recognize elder that has passed on, Sonny Hendricks, that allowed us to get this started. And he had this thought, he had this almost like a dream, you know, that he remembers hearing the language as a young man. And so therefore we keep that language alive by continuing to teach it. And I myself, you know, I could speak a little bit, but I humble myself, and I'm nothing unless I could speak with all the people. And so that's why I continue to teach, so we can all speak together, because I can't speak to myself. So we do at the Chewewe Kocha Blue House Education Center, we have 3 after-school program classrooms here, kindergarten up to lower class grades, and then you got a junior high grades, and then you got a high school grades, and you have the adult grades. And so thank goodness we were able to be a part of a grant, A&A grant, work with some people who I'll mention here in these words on this paper, which I got to look at because there's so many things going on in my mind. I might start talking about dinner, and I ain't had dinner yet, so we'll see. So I want to mention Debbie Colston, who was a part of getting that going. Dr. Sherry Tash, she's from Kentucky, and she worked for many years at UC Davis and works with us still to this day. Allowed me to be a better person, to learn that language the best of my ability to continue to learn. I'd like to recognize Kendra Neff. She worked with us for many years, and she's retired since then, but you never retire really in Indian country. They ask, well, yeah, it'd be good to retire at a certain age. You don't retire in Indian country. This is for life. This is our livelihood. This is who we are as a people. Miwuk, Yatik, Ichup, our people are living, and it's real. And so all these words that I speak come from my heart, but at the same time were shared with me sometime or another from an elder. Somebody had shared something with me. Laura Grant for working with us. It was Shingle Springs Tanif, and a good friend of mine, an older brother of mine, John Teaba from Shingle Springs over there. Most and foremost, thank the Tuolumne Language Symposium for the 7 years until Poshkaluti Sekenua Na'achawo and Hei, which is the great lung illness of 2019 came through. And normally we don't acknowledge things like that, but people wanted to know what it was and what is that was affecting our people in a way. And some people might say it's real, some people might say not, but we need to make sure that we stay healthy within ourselves, within our minds and our bodies and our spirit, so we continue on in each every day that we, you know, Creator gives us and blesses us with. So I'd like to thank the people that helped me get to where I am, because it's not about me, but these people help you along the way. So you got to humble yourself and always give that thanks to them. You know, Languages Life Conference, Marin Headland, Sausalito, California. Thankful to the ICOs, Advocates for Indigenous Language Survival, helping us bring the language back to our communities. Breath of Life took place at UC Berkeley. Thank them every other June. Of course, not now. I'd like to give a thanks to Yochadihe Wintu Nation for having Living Language Circle Conference. So they're bringing all these people together, and sometimes we can't make it, so we have to do our best when we go there and bring something back to our communities so we can make our communities stronger. And they say the future was of the future was the youth and the kids, but that we can't look to the future. We got to look now to that. We got to teach them now. And so just like me starting as a young man and where I am today as a young man, I still have a lot of learning to do. My Uncle Marvin Marine told me, even at 80 years old, he'll still be learning. And I feel the same way. At 80 years old, I'll still be learning, and I'll open my mind and heart up to so many different things that will come my way. And then truly will I understand life at its fullest. I'd like to thank the Tuolumne Valley Miwuk tribe, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have our Miwuk language program. And that's what allows me to do what I do. Even if I didn't work in this position as a manager or work at Cheyenne Coach at Blue House Education Center, I would still be doing this, because that's what the elders wanted, and that's what they seen, you know, in their path, and their, when they opened their eyes, they wanted the people to be able to speak again, you know. So, you know, even today, Katuli watched me what I win, you know, say the language today, you know, speak the language. And also we like to recognize the Cheyenne Coach staff, education staff, and everybody that encompasses that. Our library is growing and building with so much archival stuff, and Shanta Millis is the librarian down there, and eventually we're going to have so many different things going through there, and fulfilling the needs of everybody that they have for the language. And I get so excited and about it, because it's like something else. Even going to school, you know, I learned some things in school, but after I left school, I went to see my teacher, Sakapet, which is my teacher, Brown Ted. And he used to teach me all these things and some miscellaneous language here and there, songs and dances. And he said, one day you'll be solo puppet. And I said, oh man, what does that mean? He says, you're going to be a headman singer. You can be a leader within. And I said, well, you know what? I'm a part of a tribe, of a people. So if we learn together, we'll be that much stronger. And it's happening. It's coming along. In our classrooms on a daily, we're seeing anywhere from 15 to 20 plus kids in our classrooms. And we're very blessed to have curriculums 1 through 20, and in some cases, beginners, intermediate, and a master's class for adults too at the same time. But there's only so many hours in a day that allows you to be able to focus on this. And of course, they have their regular curriculum that comes from the school systems. We are living 2 worlds, but at the same time, you know, with the backing of our elders are very important, and in our families, and having that language nest within the household, and saying every little bit that you can. That's the most important part. To see these elders speak is such a blessing, because we don't know what tomorrow will bring, but we know that it's now, it's here. The time is now to speak the language, to share the language, and no matter what it costs or whatever we need to do and the hours it takes, or we won't say how many cars I went through traveling to and from, but you know, I would have probably walked if it wasn't raining, you know. So and also there was a lot of documentation was done, and we've been very lucky to have a lot of documentation, you know, more than 8 different books of people from Tuolumne. And so we're actually a mixture of Southern Miwuk, Northern Miwuk, and Central Miwuk. And I myself like the Southern dialect of speaking, and they're so blessed that they have so much language over there. And when we continue here at the Blue House Education Center to focus on what the tribe asked us to do, which was the Central dialect, then maybe we'll be able to touch base on the different other dialects. But we do have that. We do have an understanding with each and every one of them, whether they say Machuksisu, or they say Machuksis, or they say Majuksis. You know, we all understand each other, and that's the most important part. I have some things here that I want to share with you guys. And one thing that's a blessing, you know, now that we have our education system here and we're able to get together, one thing that's really cool is that we have these songs that we could sing in there. They come from the Alethi style kind of a song. And it's when the Hayapo, the captain, used to come back through and give thanks to the people, and for get nourishment to the people and for their bodies, and for having a good year, a good acorn harvest, whatever it may be, or you know, a good hunt, or a good catch, whether they're fishermen or they're hunters. We have these songs, and we have to acknowledge in many different ways, because sometimes the people relate to the language. And so when I say that, we wanted to, you know, recognize things that are happening within our communities, missing indigenous women, you know, within our communities. And it affects us on a bigger level, because our native populations are a little bit smaller, so we see it firsthand. You know, sadly to say, we had to experience something like that. So in return, I talked to Dr. Sherry Tash, and I said, because she understands all that jargon, all the fundamentals, and I call it the madness. But I talked to her and I said, you know what? With this language that we have here, we have to put something in perspective, something that we could sing and relate to the tribal people. And she said, okay. So as we bring the language together and we start talking about it, you know, she puts it into its format and conjugation, all these hypothetical words and linguistics fundamentals and all these big talk, you know. And I'm not there yet, but I understand the language. And she says, okay, so we came up with, and here's an example of things that we talk about when we do and how we relate to people, whether it be missing Indigenous women, and we acknowledge them and we pray that they make it home or they're found, and that, you know, there's peace within the people, and there's a closure. So here's just an example, and hopefully you can hear. I won't sing it, but I'm just gonna share the words, and you can hear how it sounds. We all call you. We call you home. We call you to return home. Ancient ones, we ask you to assist us in bringing that loved one home. Here we have stayed. We look for you. Our relations return now. And so then once again, calling you all back home. So these words are not just words, because these are feelings that people have. And so we have to relate to it like that. You know, we got to relate to the mothers, because they're life givers and they take care of us. Without the mothers and the nurturers and the people that prepare the food, we'd go hungry. No, just kidding. You know, but we would go hungry in a sense. And so we need them. You know, they go through things that men couldn't even go through, you know. So, you know, and this song that we had created for this, and it, like I said, it's a Letu style song, and it allows you to reach the people and pray for the people in this way. So examples of your ancestors have invited you home. You know, of course, in English, it doesn't sound as beautiful as it does in Miwuk. And Miwuk is our language. Miwuk, our language. So, for instance, this is the good word song to a mother, and Kuchi Nito Liwa Uta Muli, you know. So I won't go too much on that, but ancient ones take care of you. Hoyamuk Hanonanish, you know. So the language is beautiful in itself, and it's uplifting, but it helps us to create closure for the people. And that's what the language does, and that's how important the language is to our people. You know, I have my cousin Sunny here that assists me, and she helps me in many different ways when it comes to getting this language out to the kids and to the people. You know, due to that pandemic and whatever's happening out there, you know, I relate that to the madness too. And we got to stay close to the fire. We got to stay close to the roundhouse. We got to stay close to our teachings, because this is what the kids will understand. They'll understand and respect that the parents are trying to give them the information that they need so they can survive. And they call it Wale, the earth, or Wale To, the earth's place, you know. So another one that we had is not only honoring the mothers, you know, but honoring the fathers. They play an important role too. They got to take care of us, and warriors, they got to take care of us like that. So in that case, you know, we ask the same thing, you know, whether they're journeying or they're taking care of our people, you know. We've been able to implement food and talk about the foods. In some case, we had to talk about something like, if it was a banana, something yellow that is long and that you eat, or berries in relation to something that comes from the earth, or you're talking about something that might be not like native, but it comes from the non-native people, you know. So we have stuff like that. We wanted to relate to the kids on the outside, and Haleato, which is the open forest, and speak to them, and of course we got documentation, and it's an oral tradition, but now kids relate different ways. iPads, iTouches, you know, they got the phones, you can do anything. So I make sure that I send stuff with the phones to them, and then you have the computers that do everything for you, but nothing could replace the people speaking to their kids and teaching them, you know. What are you doing? Where are you going? Are you tired? Did you eat yet? Are you thirsty? Let's go. I love you too, love me back, you know. So there's so many different things that we teach to the kids. And okay, so it looks like I got 2 minutes, but so I'll go real fast real quick. So one thing is recognizing all of everything's in our existence outside in the open, you know, recognizing the medicinals, the edibles, the foods, and recognizing all the trees, everything in your surrounding. So we have that documented in northern, central, southern, and plains and dialects. And then, so if people don't go out there a lot, like they're not going out there a lot, then we laminate it and we put it out there for the people that know. They'll just speak of it off the top of their mind. But if not, then you have something that shows it in detail, and it shows its uses and its medicinals, and whether it be edible or it's not edible, or the picture. Some people don't recognize that. So we have to think of, you know, there's 8 different senses. You know, you got audio, you got, you know, you got visual, you got, you know, kinesthetics, you got hands-on, you got so many different ways to relate to children or adults or people in general. And so maybe it's sign language, or you do a basic going through the motions. You know, we got to relate to the kids, whether they're singing the Incy Wincy Spider went up the willow tree, out came the rain and drowned the spider out. So we didn't have the waterfall in the language, we had the willow tree. So they would go, Tuni achaya yika chi hiwa wukuspanu nuku unu shuwali palange achaya yi hiyama la shu ye talukna nuka shu Tuni achaya yika chi hiwa wukuspanu achu. So if they relate to like that, or it could be burning a little star. In some cases, we have a lot of things and a lot of seasons, you know, Christmas time, you know, we have old Christmas tree. And sometimes we will not translate too much because it's almost as if we might as well speak English. So we are only going to translate a little bit in things that we would normally say. So the song Winter Tree, Tuolumne, Hoshe Moklutis Ewa, you know, so you're talking about the tree and everything like that. So the kids go, oh, Christmas, like, you know, something that we've learned to adapt to, and things that I learned trait. And so sometimes we do stuff like that. Every classroom that we have has 1 through 10, and we have different ways of speaking. The Chumtia people count a certain way, Central counts a certain way, Northern counts a certain way. Anything from Kenne, Kenge, Luti. And you got to be careful, because if you say Ludi, that means maybe in Northern. So you got to be careful what you say. And we have some words that relate to the Southern Miwuk people too, like that. And so if you say the wrong thing and an elder catches you, you don't want to be in that hot seat. So you got to be careful what you say. Always important. And so all of our classes right now, our kids, we don't count to 100, but the kids can count to 100. And we're very blessed to be able to do that. And just by hearing it, and seeing it now, they could almost write it if they wanted to, you know, but we don't go too far because we didn't really need that many numbers. It might have been just a measurement off your hand, which the measurements that you needed, you know. So we have many miscellaneous literature that goes in the class. They come in, Matuxis. I know I got like 2 seconds, huh? Sorry, you know I could talk forever. So I'm going to leave it at that right there, but I thank you for allowing me to come here and share. And check us out on Miwuk.com, and anything that I have is the people's, and I do it for the people. And this building, this classroom does not define us as a people. We're outside people. We work with Mother Earth, and we're a part of this world, and you know, and we're all one people, like Bill said. And so it's good to see Bill and everybody, and I thank you again. Thank you from me to all of you for allowing me to be here and share with you.
Oh, thank you, Carlos. And thank you for the descriptions of a lot of the language revitalization efforts and the techniques and strategies that you use. For those who are watching, you can make notes for yourself for questions to submit, and we can follow up at the end of this. But I would like to transition to Tommy Orange. So Tommy, whenever you're ready, you can unmute yourself and take it away.
Thank you, Stephanie. And thank you, Carlos and Bill, for sharing this time. During COVID, me and my family have actually been learning Cheyenne from my dad. So it's great to hear you talk about the language. And he's a fluent speaker, but we didn't grow up with it like that. So it's been really cool to be trying. You know, we've been doing it for almost a year, maybe 9 months, and are at the basics. But to get to a place to be able to talk is, like you said, is the goal, to talk to each other. So I wrote a book called There, is a novel that came out 2 years ago. The characters are urban natives. I grew up in Oakland, and I worked in the Oakland community for about 8 years, and didn't really see that experience represented in books or in film. A lot of times we're depicted as historical, and I really wanted to explore, you know, my own identity and experience in a way, in a novel, because I didn't see it represented, and I just, you know, I like what novels can do to put you in the shoes of others and let you understand their context. So I am going to read a little bit from a chapter called Thomas Frank, which that's actually my first and middle name. And it's a pretty personal chapter. The character is not as related and interconnected as some of the others, but I just thought I'd read some of it. Maybe a little bit from there. I'll read a little bit from the interlude, and maybe from the prologue. The book centers around a powwow in Oakland, and how you kind of find out how everyone's lives are connected by the end of the book, the way it all converges at the powwow. Thomas Frank. Before you were born, you were a head and a tail in a milky pool, a swimmer. You were a race, a dying off, a breaking through, an arrival. Before you were born, you were an egg in your mom who was an egg in her mom. Before you were born, you were the nested Russian grandmother doll of possibility in your mom's ovaries. You were two halves of 1,000 different kinds of possibilities, 1,000,000 heads or tails, flip shine on a spun coin. Before you were born, you were the idea to make it to California for gold or bust. You were white, you were brown, you were red, you were dust. You were hiding, you were seeking. Before you were born, you were chased, beaten, broken, trapped on a reservation in Oklahoma. Before you were born, you were an idea your mom got into her head in the 70s to hitchhike across the country and become a dancer in New York. You were on your way when she did not make it across the country, but sputtered and spiraled and wound up in Taos, New Mexico, at a peyote commune named Morning Star. Before you were born, you were your dad's decision to move away from the reservation up to northern New Mexico to learn about a Pueblo guy's fireplace. You were the light in the wet of your parents' eyes as they met across that fireplace in ceremony. Before you were born, your halves inside them moved to Oakland. Before you were born, before your body was much more than heart, spine, bone, brain, skin, blood, and vein, when you just started to build muscle with movement, before you showed, bulged in her belly, as her belly, before your dad's pride could belly swell from the sight of you. Your parents were in a room listening to the sound your heart made. You had an arrhythmic heartbeat. The doctor said it was normal. Your arrhythmic heart was not abnormal. Maybe he's a drummer, your dad said. He doesn't even know what a drum is, your mom said. Heart, your dad said. The man said arrhythmic. That means no rhythm. Maybe it just means he knows the rhythm so good he doesn't always hit it when you expect him to. Rhythm of what? She said. But once you got big enough to make your mom feel you, she couldn't deny it. You swam to the beat. When your dad brought out the kettle drum, you'd kick her in time with it, or to her heartbeat, or to one of the oldies mixtapes she had made from records she loved and played to no end in your Aerostar minivan. Once you were out in the world, running and jumping and climbing, you tapped your toes and fingers everywhere, all the time. On tabletops, desktops, you tapped every surface you found in front of you, listened for the sound things made back at you when you hit them. The timbre of taps, the din of dings, silverware clangs in kitchens, door knocks, knuckle cracks, head scratches. You were finding out that everything makes sound. Everything can be drumming, whether rhythm is kept or strays, even gunshots and backfire, the howl of trains at night, the wind against your windows. The world is made of sound, but inside every kind of sound lurked a sadness. In the quiet between your parents, after a fight they both managed to lose. You and your sisters listening through the walls for tones, listening for early signs of a fight, for late signs of a fight reignited. The sound of the worship service, that building drone and wail of evangelical Christian worship, your mom speaking in tongues on the crest of that weekly Sunday wave. Sadness because you couldn't feel any of it in there and wanted to, felt you needed it, that it could protect you from the dreams you had almost every night about the end of the world and the possibility of hell forever. You living there still a boy, unable to die or leave or do anything but burn in a lake of fire. Sadness came when you had to wake up your snoring dad in church, even as members of the congregation, members of your family, were being slain by the Holy Ghost in the aisles right next to him. Sadness came when the days got shorter at the end of summer, when the street got quiet without kids out anymore. In the color of that fleeting sky, sadness lurked, sadness pounced, slid in between everything, anything it could find its way into, through sound, through you. You didn't think of any of the tapping or knocking as drumming until you actually started drumming many years later. It would have been good to know that you'd always done something naturally, but there was too much going on with everyone else in your family for anyone to notice. You should probably have done something else with your fingers and toes than tap, with your mind and time than knock at all the surfaces in your life like you were looking for a way in. This is from the interlude. Powwows. For powwows, we come from all over the country, from reservations and cities, from rancherias, forts, pueblos, lagoons, and off-reservation trust lands. We come from towns on the sides of highways in northern Nevada with names like Winnemucca. Some of us come all the way out from Oklahoma, South Dakota, Arizona, New Mexico, Montana, Minnesota. We come from Phoenix, Albuquerque, Los Angeles, New York City, Pine Ridge, Fort Apache, Gila River, Pitt River, the Osage Reservation, Rosebud, Flathead, Red Lake, San Carlos, Turtle Mountain, the Navajo Reservation. To get to powwows, we drive alone and in pairs on road trips. We caravan as families, piled in station wagons, vans, and in the backs of Ford Broncos. Some of us smoke 2 packs a day if we're driving, or drink beer continually to keep ourselves occupied. Some of us who give up that tired life on that long red road of sobriety, we drink coffee. We sing, pray, and tell stories until we run out. We lie, cheat, and steal our stories, sweat and bleed them out along the highway, until that long white line makes us quiet, makes us pull over to sleep. When we get tired, we stop at motels and hotels. We sleep in our cars on the side of the road, at rest stops and truck stops, in Walmart parking lots. We are young people and old, every kind of Indian in between. We made powwows because we needed a place to be together, something intertribal, something old, something to make us money, something we could work toward for our jewelry, our songs, our dances, our drums. We keep powwowing because there aren't very many places where we all get to be together, where we get to see and hear each other. We all came to the big Oakland powwow for different reasons. The messy dangling strands of our lives got pulled into a braid, tied to the back of everything we'd been doing all along to get us here. We've been coming for miles, and we've been coming for years, generations, lifetimes, layered in prayer and hand-woven regalia, beaded and sewn together, feathered, braided, blessed, and cursed. Big Oakland Powwow. In the Oakland Coliseum parking lot for the Big Oakland Powwow, there is one thing that makes many of our cars the same. Our bumpers and rear windows are covered with Indian stickers like "We're still here," and "My other vehicle is a war pony." And sure, you can trust the government, just ask an Indian. Custer had it coming. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children, fighting terrorism since 1492. And my child didn't make the honor list, but she sure can sing an honor song. There are Shimel sister stickers and Navajo Nation stickers, Cherokee Nation stickers, Idle No More, and AIM flags duct taped to antennas. There are dream catchers and tiny moccasins, feathers and beaded miscellany hanging from rearview mirrors. We are Indians and Native Americans, American Indians and Native American Indians, North American Indians, Natives, NDNs and Indians, status Indians and non-status Indians, First Nations Indians, and Indians so Indian we either think about the fact of it every single day or we never think about it at all. We are urban Indians and indigenous Indians, res Indians, and Indians from Mexico and Central and South America. We are Alaska Native Indians, Native Hawaiians, and European expatriate Indians. Indians from 8 different tribes with quarter blood quantum requirements and so not federally recognized Indian kinds of Indians. We are enrolled members of tribes and disenrolled members, and eligible members and tribal council members. We are full blood, half-breed, quadroon, 8th, 16th, 32nds, undoable math, and significant remainders. Blood. Blood is messy when it comes out. Inside it runs clean and looks blue in tubes that line our bodies, that split and branch like Earth's river systems. Blood is 90% water, and like water it must move. Blood must flow, never stray or split or clot or divide, lose any essential amount of itself while it distributes evenly through our bodies. But blood is messy when it comes out. It dries, divides, and cracks in the air. Native blood quantum was introduced in 1705 at the Virginia colony. If you were at least half Native, you didn't have the same rights as white people. Blood quantum and tribal membership qualifications have since been turned over to individual tribes to decide. In the late 1990s, Saddam Hussein commissioned a Quran to be written in his own blood. Now Muslim leaders aren't sure what to do with it. To have written the Quran in blood was a sin, but would also be a sin. The wound that was made when white people came and took all that they took has never healed. An unattended wound gets infected, becomes a new kind of wound, like the history of what actually happened became a new kind of history. All these stories that we haven't been telling all this time, that we haven't been listening to, are just part of what we need to heal. Not that we're broken. And don't make the mistake of calling us resilient. To not have been destroyed, to not have given up, to have survived is no badge of honor. Would you call an attempted murder victim resilient? When we go to tell our stories, people think we want it to have gone different. People want to say things like sore losers and move on already. Quit playing the blame game. But is it a game? Only those who have lost as much as we have see the particularly nasty slice of smile on someone who thinks they're winning when they say, get over it. This is the thing. If you have the option to not think about or even consider history, whether you learned it right or not, whether it even deserves consideration, that's how you know you're on board the ship that serves hors d'oeuvres and fluffs your pillows, while others are out at sea, swimming or drowning, or clinging to little inflatable rafts that they have to take turns keeping inflated. People short of breath, who've never even heard of the words hors d'oeuvres or fluff. When someone from up on the yacht says, it's too bad those people down there are lazy and not as smart and able as we are up here, we who have built these strong, large, stylish boats ourselves, we who float the 7 seas like kings. And then someone else on board says something like, but your father gave you this yacht, and these are his servants who brought the hors d'oeuvres. At which point that person gets tossed overboard by a group of hired thugs who'd been hired by the father who owned the yacht, hired for the express purpose of removing any and all agitators on the yacht to keep them from making unnecessary waves, or even referencing the father or the yacht itself. Meanwhile, the man thrown overboard begs for his life, and the people on the small inflatable rafts can't get to him soon enough, or they don't even try, and the yacht's speed and weight cause an undertow. Then in whispers, while the agitator gets sucked under the yacht, private agreements are made, precautions are measured out, and everyone quietly agrees to keep on quietly agreeing the implied rule of law and to not think about what just happened. Put these things in place is only spoken of in the form of lore, stories told to children at night under the stars, at which point there are suddenly several fathers, noble, wise forefathers, and the boat sails on unfettered. If you were fortunate enough to be born into a family whose ancestors directly benefited from genocide and or slavery, maybe you think the more you don't know, the more innocent you can stay, which is a good incentive to not find out, to not look too deep, to walk carefully around the sleeping tiger. Look no further than your last name. Follow it back and you might find your line paved with gold or beset with traps. I'll stop there. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has. I'll turn it back over to you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Tommy. And since you did just finish reading and some of the very specific things you read, actually, one person had a question about. So I'll just start with some of the questions that are directed towards your work and to you, and then we'll go to the questions that are also for Bill and Carlos. So this first question, let me scroll to that. Okay, so this is from an anonymous attendee. I read and appreciated your novel, They're There. At one point, you have the narrator right, and don't make the mistake of calling us resilient. I'm wondering if you can expand on that a bit. I'm in an Indigenous focused social work program, and resilience is a huge topic and focus. I think many people in my field would actually use that word resilient to describe an attempted murder victim, referring to the analogy in your book. I was just hoping to get a better understanding of how you see the concept of resilience and the way it is applied or misapplied to Native people. Thank you.
So, I think initially when I first started hearing the word, it's a great word and it's a very positive attribute. I think I worked in the nonprofit world and went to a lot of conferences and, read a lot of grants speak around resilience and heard a lot of non-Native people use the word in a way that sounded really condescending and like not really addressing or acknowledging what we are resilient about. It's sort of a way to pat us on our back before acknowledging what we've been through. So I was going after the word in the book from that perspective. I certainly wouldn't discourage anybody from working with somebody and calling them resilient. I think it can be a really empowering word to use. And, this is a work of fiction where I'm just sort of going after that word, and it's specifically coming from that experience that I had with hearing the word and kind of growing tired of the way it was used. So it had more to do with that than I'm not trying to go after the word resilience or people that want to use it, because I think it, without the context and the way that I've heard it used, it's a great word and a great attribute.
Thank you for clarifying, Tommy. There was another question about your book, and that was, can you speak to the identity development of young Native men when it comes to embracing or suppressing heritage? The brother who journeyed from secretly dancing to participating in the powwow, and the peer pressure that it isn't cool to embrace such things, but yet other things are embraced, like drinking. Why must someone feel that they are appropriating their own culture? And how does that feel, or how is that experienced?
Well, I think in the urban Native world, it can be hard to know what it means to like go back to your cultural ways. There's a lot of intertribal mixes in the community because on relocation, a lot of different tribes came to city centers all over the country. And this created communities who now have grandchildren who are from different tribes. And powwow, the reason I chose a powwow as an event in the book was because powwows are very intertribal, especially in cities. And this was a way for this young man to explore what that could mean for him. You know, I think I know who I am now, and knowing what I know now, I don't know that I'd write the same book, but that's why, you know, I started writing it a long time ago and finished it in 2018. But I think in terms of reconnecting and what sort of activities are the best ones, I think language is the most powerful to reconnect to your tribe. If you have the resources, I know there are a lot of tribes that are doing the revitalization, as Carlos was talking about, but the cultural value that's embedded in language, as I've just started learning myself, as I said earlier, through Cheyenne, there's so much embedded about culture that it's just such a great place to connect and learn by learning your language. But in urban communities, you know, sometimes powwow culture is what they have, and a lot of times this is a pan-Indian thing, and it's very confusing because we're defined so often by the outside world, and a lot of people want to say you're not Indian enough. You're never Indian enough unless you're doing this, and this, and that's, you know, a lot of times the popular culture is holding you up to an impossible standard of like a historical figure. So there are various different ways that people try to connect to who they are, and there are a lot of challenges. I didn't have the experience of having it be cool or uncool growing up. We grew up going back to Oklahoma to see family on my dad's side, and we didn't really grow up around the community. I don't know. I think I've strayed a little bit from the question.
You got most of it. One of the things, one of the questions that I think that was important for the person who asked this was, why must someone feel that they're appropriating their own culture?
I mean, I think this has to do with the outside view of what it means to be Native, and the problematic nature of Pan-Indianism as a cultural touchstone. So it can feel like not the true authentic way to go to a powwow drum, because that's not necessarily your tribal specifically cultural practice. So it can, if you pick up Pan-Indianism as a way to reconnect to your tribal roots, it can feel like you're not actually doing it in the right way. And so there's all sorts of, you know, traps like these in trying to authentically connect to who you are. And you know, as Native people, there is a Pan-Indianism that we have to embrace, and but I think there are dangers to it, to not understanding what is tribally specific, and both for your personal growth and for you know, people around the country to understand how rich and diverse the country is, and how many different nations and kinds of nations there are.
I really appreciate your answer, Tommy, and I'm just going to add a little bit of personal context to help create an example for maybe some of those who don't understand, or maybe someone doesn't have a lot of experience with Pan-Indianism, or they're not used to that term. So, you know, for myself, I'm Hupa. My father was Hupa and Yurok. My mom's, you know, just she's white, and even though I was born and raised in Hupa, I didn't get to grow up practicing ceremony and traditions of the Hupa Nation. And so, you know, I started participating in sweat ceremony, and I had the opportunity to be at a Native woman's drum. And, you know, traditionally in my tribe, women, you know, did not sweat, and women did not drum. And so I had to navigate what was that for myself. And, you know, it's more common now for women to sweat and for women to drum, Native women. And, you know, I also, just even with issues of identity, right? I'm a light-skinned Native person. And so those ideas of stereotype and what it means to be Native, and if you're recognized by your tribe, or if your tribe isn't recognized by the government, and those type of issues. And are you playing a part or are you not? Or how do you connect with traditional ways, even if they're not your tribe's traditional ways, but it still helps center you? Or, practice it. Now I get to participate in Miwuk, dance ceremony and culture. And it's different than my own nation, right? But it's still a way of connecting with the mother and with those ways in that culture. So there's many layers and it is super complex. So I appreciate your stuff, and I hope that brief example helped provide some understanding for maybe some of you who didn't quite understand some of that. We do have many questions coming through on the question and answer, but I wanted to give all of our speakers a chance, hearing from each other, Bill, Carlos, and Tommy, hearing from each other. Is there something that any of you wanted to contribute, or something that was brought up for one of you hearing one of the other speakers talk? And you could feel free to unmute yourselves and just kind of jump in.
Yeah, I would like to comment on, Carlos. He was, I worked with him when he had just turned 18. I was working in Tuolumne as a counselor. And I wanted to say I really feel good about his accomplishments as a human being, and the work he's done and the work he's doing. It just makes me feel good. A lot of times we use this word proud, and that's an okay word, but I prefer to use the thing, even with love, as that good feeling that we feel good about. Chatana, real good. And so that's how I feel in my heart about it. And Tommy's experience in life and some of the things he said, looking at how do non-Indians relate to us? What do they think we are? We're always different anyway. But the thing I would like to promote is that individuals would take the time and look at individual tribes. Now, the Miwuk culture is a lot different than Plains Indians or East Coast, or once you come over to Sierra Nevadas, there's a big difference in ceremony. There's a difference in regalia, I guess you could call it, and how we dress, how we look, but the connection is we've suffered the same fate across this country from the very beginning, and for 500 years or more. And so talking about resilience, you look at that. But so if you think about resilience, is that we're saying everything's okay and we just keep moving. Well, it's not okay, but we keep moving forward, and we are resilient in the fact that we get knocked down, we get up, and we keep moving forward best we can. And that goes across this country with all the tribes, is that it's hard to explain, and the feelings of not being as good as, like he was talking about, not being Indian enough because you don't know all of your culture. And it's the modern world we live in. It's very hard for me to talk on this Zoom meeting. I don't have anybody in front of me except pictures. So I'm kind of talking to myself, and I don't sound so good to myself, sometimes. So it's a difficult thing. Now I'm learning how to do this in this last year with this COVID. We're struggling through it. I've lost relatives to this, and close friends. So it's affected us in many ways, but we're still moving forward the best we can. And we're learning these new technologies that don't have the same feeling. It's when you're sitting next to someone talking, or across the table, or across the rock, or whatever. You know, so it's a difficult to try to focus when you can't see the people you're talking to. You don't know how they're reacting, so you just talk and hope they understand. You know. So anyway, I would let Carlos say something there.
Gee, my heart is good. My elder, thank you, for them good words. And, it's what it takes, all of us together to come to a collective and do our part and do what we need to do. I learned from many, many different people, and it says on some of these questions here, what helped you to be successful or effective? And, first, I got to acknowledge my grandmother. She's passed on since then, but she's with me every day. I'm pretty sure of it. And I know it in my heart. But that's what you need, is somebody close to you, someone that loves you and cares about you. And there's a reason for what you're doing. And it's not a monetary value. It's not about money or gain or status. It's about what makes you feel good, what allows you to get to each and every day. And once again, my grandmother was a big part of that. And my aunt and my mom created a nonprofit that whatever they do helps bring funding to the department. And they don't have to, but they want to do it in honor of their mother. And so we're very appreciative of that. But at the same time, even if it wasn't any kind of funding or anything, knowing that they would do it out of the kindness of their heart and the love for their mother. And that's what makes it successful and effective, is you do it for the right reasons. And if there was a question I was going to answer, it'd be that one right there. Yeah, we could all learn from each other and teach to each other and gather together. And yeah, this Zoom is something else. You all look real skinny in the picture. We all look small. Right on. That's good though. But once again, thank you, Stephanie and Bill, and it's nice to meet Tommy Orange and all the people that's here listening. And so that was my 2 cents.
Thank you. There are several questions. There's several for Bill and several for Tommy. So I do want to make sure I ask one of these here. So one of them is, why is it so hard for it to achieve federal recognition? Why is the government so resistant to recognizing more tribes? Do they fear something, or are they or other entities gaining something by denying recognition?
Well, it seems as that it is to the benefit of the government. The less Indians there are that they can say, oh yes, these are Indians, then the less they have to pay attention to it. They don't have to face the crimes that this country has done against the Indians. The genocide, the boarding schools, all of that. They don't have to look at that. They don't have to look in the mirror then. So that's one reason, and some of them look at it as, well, even some of the other tribes, oh, well, those guys will be getting some of our funding. So it's not just the government. It's other tribes that are worried about having to share what little they have, which was never Indian way anyway, at least the way I understand it. We always had to share what little we had. That's why we're still here. That's why we're still in the fight. So no, the government doesn't want to, and they keep running us around and finding reasons not to acknowledge us instead of following their own rules and saying, okay, we have one instance where if you look at our webpage, you can see the letters from some of the anthropologists that worked on our petition that recommended to the OFA that we be acknowledged. And by the time it went up the chain, they come to find ways to not acknowledge us. So that's a reality we deal with. And we just keep trying. And with the support of people, the more like this opportunity here that we can share our struggles to let more people understand. You know, there's so many people that, well, what is federal acknowledgement? Why do you want that? They don't know what it is. They don't know the history of what happened to us here in California. They know about, you know, through the plains and all the way to the East Coast. But when you get to California, it's a whole different thing. Finally, the governor did acknowledge the genocide that happened here. But we've written letters to him to be able to talk to him, and we haven't got a response at all. And I understand there's a pandemic going on, but they got a lot of staff. They could at least acknowledge they got the letter and that they would look at it, but that hasn't been done. So, you know, a lot of the things that are going on in California now, even now with this bill that would allow non-federally recognized tribes to participate in certain things, that's all good, but it's like having access to health insurance, but you can't afford it. You know, it's the same type of thing. How do we do it? We continue to try to raise money. And it was always very hard for me to talk about money to people and ask for these things. You know, so I've had to learn how to do that. It was always, I was embarrassed and ashamed to have to ask. So I'm starting to get over that. But that's where it is, because, you know, it's like hungry and begging again, you know. And we shouldn't have to do that, but here we are. And, you know, I guess that's how I can answer that question. Maybe it was got a little long on the answer, but basically it's a number of things. And so that's why we try to let people know the situation with the unrecognized tribes across the country, really, is that we're all trying for that. And it's not about, you know, it's not about casinos and all that. It's about that acknowledgement and getting that justice for, you know, our ancestors. I think about my great-grandparents, you know, my grandparents, great-grandparents, what they struggled through, being ashamed to be Indian. If there's any way they could not claim it, they would, you know. Oh no, I'm not really, you know. My grandma used to say, oh, tell my grandpa, don't talk about that stuff. You know, when you tell stories and talk about medicine, things like that. Oh, don't talk about that stuff. You know, but her parents were medicine people, but she tried to hide it. So that was a shame she went through. And so for her and others, that's why I keep going at this.
Thank you, Uncle. There are two questions that always come up. And so there's some that are coming through the question and answers here, but then also what I get asked as soon as these events get over. one, how can people help, right? So what kind of actions can people take? And two, where can I learn more?
Okay, so we have the web page, southernsierramiwuknation.org. If you can put that on the little chat thing or whatever that is, everybody can have that information. All the information that I've talked to you about tonight is on that web page, plus more. And so you can start with that. And the thing you can do is your representatives, your senators, get them to start paying attention, write them letters. We have a couple of groups that when we were seeking extensions on this for more time because they held us up, haven't given us the information. So have a little network, and we send out an email saying, hey, we need you to get on the congressional people to do something about this. And so that's a possibility. You can write letters of support to the OFA. And again, this is all on the webpage, as who you can send it to, where to send it. If you do write a letter of support, we would like a copy to come back to the tribe for our records. And and again, we get back to donations. On the webpage, you can be, there's information on how you can make donations. And with the struggle, so one of the things is that, right now, this year, with the pandemic, we had created a film, Me-Wuk, and it was some of us talking about a number of things on this film. And so we were doing presentations with that, and we had 3 of them already set up before March, and we haven't been able to do those. So that fundraising is gone. We had we always have a taco booth at the Mariposa County Fair. That was canceled. So we're struggling right now just to pay rent on the building where we have all of our information, to keep the lights on, that sort of thing. And so we need help with that. We're getting a larger and larger bill with the attorneys. I know people don't like to pay for attorneys, but whatever people can donate in that way. And we've been trying to find people that have the ability to maybe sponsor us, to come forward with a larger amount of money. That's what's going to keep us alive and keep us going. Some people get discouraged when we look at the bill we have and say, oh, that's so much money. How are we ever going to pay it? I tell them if we get recognized, we can apply for those funds, that trust fund. Right off the bat, we'd get about $1 million. So that's a goal if they just look at money, but we're not there yet. So, but by writing to your congressional people, doing some reading and studying and getting more history, I'm willing to meet with people and talk with them at any time, anywhere, to help explain it. If you want to know about some of the ugly history, there's a, I think it's called American Genocide by Benjamin Madley. If you want to hear what happened in the 1850s and on, bounties on Indians, but I can tell you could probably only read 1 chapter at a time and take a break. It's pretty depressing. So that's how you can help, is to educate yourself more, about this federal acknowledgement process. There's a lot online, besides our webpage that, it's about getting an understanding of what happened to California Indians here, which has been ignored for completely. So that's how it can help. And if you don't have any money, have a prayer. That's what we always say. If you got nothing else, offer a prayer.
Thank you, Uncle, for describing those ways that people can get involved, take action individually. Those letters of everyone, we have over 118 people on this Zoom right now. And so if everyone here decided to write their representative, right? And if
Yes.
some people decided to donate some money, but then also that self-education and self-awareness, that's where the discipline of ethnic studies is really important, because you can, take classes and learn about the history that wasn't really taught in our schools. There is a question, a follow-up question about this federal recognition. Uncle, there's a relative from Native Hawaiian on the question and answers who gave some examples about some successes that their family members made. And so they asked, does your band, in partnership with other California tribes who are seeking federal acknowledgement, have any representation at the UN who are advocating on your behalf?
Not at the UN. We've worked with several tribes in our area here, Dunlap, and we did a lot more years ago with a number of tribes. We even traveled to Washington, D.C. There were over 100 unrecognized tribes there when Bill Clinton was president. We went to the White House and we talked a lot. We made progress. Then with the change of administration, it went backwards again. We hoped that the next one, we'd get a little more attention, haven't. And then the last one, it's, well, nothing good anyway. So we haven't gone to the UN. It's, we've been just trying to work through this process, and we haven't been completely denied yet. The last response was, we don't see you as a modern community, and if you can't prove that one, we don't even need to look at the rest of them. Our history or anything. So that's the response we got. So we're working on that. And, getting out and about, there's so many things that we could do, but we focus on, our enrollment, our history, all of those things, and trying to present all of that's kind of consumes the time that we have. And, we don't have a lot of people that are willing to go out and speak that much, so it's a struggle. Yes, we've thought about all these things, and it's things that we can do, but in some of it, you got to have all of our ducks in a row. At least I believe that we need to have those questions they ask us answered. And then we can say, hey, we've answered all your questions. Now you need to give us a better answer than that. But we're dealing with the federal government. So I think now one of the most positive things is that uh, when Deb Holland was on the Natural Resources Committee and she was on the National Park Subcommittee, she came to Yosemite and we had a visit with her for a few hours and gave her some information and, sang for her and gave her a little blessing. And when she left, she said she would help us. Now that she's going to be the Secretary of the Interior, we have hopes there. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Bill, I'm going to transition to some more questions that are being posted for Tommy. And actually, just so you know, there's several people who have commented their gratitude and appreciation, Carlos and Bill and Tommy, that you're sharing with us tonight. So in addition to the question and answers, I keep getting messages on my phone of appreciation for all of you taking time to be here. Tommy, one person had shared that they read there and absolutely loved it, but that your voice taught them and changed them and educated them even more than just reading the book. Hearing you speak those same words affected them in a different way, and they really appreciate and respect what you shared. So thank you for writing, for speaking, and telling truth. Another person said you're very wise and observant, and they loved your book. And are you working on anything new?
Yeah, I'm working on what I sold a book right before the next book before the pandemic, and it's really changed since then. But part of the seed of the new book came from I was in Sweden at a museum. This was part of the book tour that I was on, and I saw a newspaper clipping that had Southern Cheyenne people in Florida in like 1875, and I couldn't understand why we would be in Florida, because I know enough about our history to know that we were never over there. So this sent me down a rabbit hole, because even though I'm enrolled with Cheyenne Arapaho tribes, we're Southern Cheyenne specifically, and there's a very different history from Southern and Northern Cheyenne. And this history that I became interested in is a specifically Southern Cheyenne one. So we ended up as prisoners of war called Fort Marion, and Richard Henry Pratt was the overseer of the prison, and the men there from 1875 to 1878. And he used the experience of having these prisoners and teaching them English through, the Bible, and teaching them military drills, and by seeing that they could be become civilized, or whatever his version of better people was, he created this campaign of the Kill the Indian, Save the Man, and created the boarding schools that then decimated our culture in a very significant way. And so goes through that experience of a character that starts as a baby at the Sand Creek Massacre, which is a family story that, part of the Cheyenne and Arapaho people's history. I have a storyline that runs from the Sand Creek Massacre and goes through this boarding school experience, goes through the Fort Marion prison experience, and in the Bay Area in the 1910s. And so there's a historical piece to the new book, and the other side of it kind of goes back and forth between history and the present. The other part of the book is everything that happened to the characters in there after the powwow kind of goes into their lives, and the effects that everything that happens at the powwow in the first book, how it affects their lives afterward. So it's in a way, it's a prequel and a sequel at the same time. That's what I'm working on.
Thank you for sharing that. There's a question from a local tribal community member who is wondering if you would be interested in doing a future book signing locally.
Sure, yeah, as soon as it is safe to do so, I'd be happy to.
Okay. What advice can the three of you share for those who are aspiring writers and cultural and tribal leaders?
I'll go first. I'll just go quickly, just from as a writer perspective. I think if you writing sometimes is thought of as like you have a story or you don't, or you are inspired or you aren't. And I think it's a really incredible art form, and it takes discipline, just like any other art form, just like painting or playing a musical instrument. So I think getting a discipline together for the practice, and then MFA programs can be really good to have access to teachers who can give you tools to write your book, and to have access to the publishing world. It can be a really good way to seeing a writing practice as a discipline, and figuring out what you want to do with that. There's just a couple of things I could say about writing.
Thank you, Tommy. Carlos and Bill, do either of you have any advice you can share for those who would like to be involved in the type of work that you do?
Yeah, good luck. But as over the years, the last 30 plus years, I've been chairman for about 20 of those years, and it takes its toll. And if you do that, don't expect to be patted on the back all the time, because that's probably not coming your way. But if you do it because it's in your heart to do it, and you do it for all of your people, not just your immediate family, you have to think of everyone. Anything that I've done, I think about all of our membership. There's over 600 of us, and probably more than that. But I keep in mind all these families. What would be a good thing for everyone, not just for my family, or what's in it for me? I just do it because that's what I feel that I need to do as a human being, as being Miwuk, and learn. Take time, takes a lot of reading, understanding, talking to people, finding ways that you can talk to people without being just dismissed as, one thing or the other. And be in a prayerful way as much as you can. The politics of things are sometimes pretty ugly, even with our own tribes, our own families. So that's why I say don't expect a lot of pats on the back and attaboys, Do it because it's in your heart to do it. It's the only way you survive it at all. And that's about the best advice I can have. And educate yourself on all of the rules and regulations and laws, and as much as you can. It takes a lot of time and effort, but always be thinking about your people, what's good for each one of them. So
Oh, thank you. And Carlos, did you have any words of wisdom or advice you can share for those who may be aspiring cultural and language leaders?
Just like you mentioned, you know, family and education, that's great ways to learn. Just got out of a travel meeting for about 3 to 4 hours earlier this day, and you look around and everybody's related, or cousin, family, friend, whatever it may be, and everything that you would do in your own house, where it's a safe environment, and love one another and teach one another, and share everything you have, and that family orientation is a plus. So where we come from here, you know, we're all kind of in this small community here, but we know everything that happens. Everybody sees everything that happens, and the best way is to have that family orientation, and that'll kind of set you in a good foundation and be grounded and have that set structure and that guideline to do what you need to do, whatever comes your way, and have a good mind, good heart, and that's what it's all about for me. Treat everybody, you know, equally. Oh,
thank you. There's a question asking why we want federal recognition. And the language of the question is also asking why we want federal recognition over self-determination and self-sufficiency. And so I would like to pose that question for all of you. Bill, you may want to take the lead on that, but if anybody, either of you other two would like to add to that, why do we want federal recognition? And what is the difference?
what is the difference? Well, it's sovereignty, sovereign rights, our right to self-determination, to determine how we govern ourselves. And whether that be good or bad, you know, but I'll break it down in some of the simpler things maybe, is that, so say for the Park Service, so you can go gather in a national park if you're a federally recognized tribe. Okay, you can, you know, as a non-federally recognized tribe, it doesn't matter where you were born, if you know, or say Yosemite is where you want to go together, you can't get the permits to do it because you're not federally recognized. You know, simple things like that. So to have land, okay, that we can say this is our land, this is our rancheria, this is our reservation, whatever the term might be. But we have a lot of ceremonies in Yosemite, but we still got to go through the Park Service and set up the time, get parking, get approvals. You know, they've been pretty good about it, but we still have to do that process. It's like when you have an elder that passes, you can't just go up there and have a ceremony. You got to make all these arrangements, and it takes too long. So having your own land, you can have your own ceremonial ground. It's like in Tuolumne there. They got the roundhouse right there, right in the middle of everyone, where everyone lives there. They can go do that right now. They can have that ceremony. They don't have to go find a place to have a meal. They don't have to go, you know, rent something, pay a lot of money, you know. That's a simple thing. That's why those are the things that are important. If we want to have a ceremony at any time, you know, we have in Yosemite, we have like 3 bear dances a year, and we have a big time. Well, you have your own land, You can have that ceremony anytime you want. It's right there. You want to call a dance or something, you can do it. You don't have to go through a big, long process to be able to do it. You know, you can have your home right there. You can provide housing for your people. Those that, you know, can't afford their own house, you know, have a place where you can take care of your elders, you know, to make sure that they're okay, that they have a place to live when they get where they can't take care of themselves so well. You can have all of that. You can have a place where the people can come together at any time. You don't have to go ask permission to be able to do that. Those are the simple things, but in reality, the most important things is to be able to have that community and come together and a place to do it. We don't have that. You know, we have to go rent buildings. You know, we don't even have a place in Mariposa big enough to hold all of our tribe if we get them all together. You know, you call everybody in where you could have a big gathering for the whole tribe. We don't have a place big enough for that. That's why we need the land. That's where we can keep our traditions moving forward. You can't, our traditions depend on the land. Without the land, it's hard to keep traditions together. Having that place for people to come together. And, you know, we do a lot of things, but that's the basic important things. And all the things you can do with this federal acknowledgement to provide for all of your people, to make sure that they're all okay. Not so they get rich, but they can make a living. The families can come back together. You have jobs where people can come home and make a living. That's what's important to me. I mean, you know, I don't have any big visions of becoming wealthy because of it. That doesn't mean that much to me, but you know, the people are taken care of and having what they need.
Thank you, Uncle. And one example I tried to give someone before about, like, say you happen to, go to church, and imagine anytime you wanted to go to church, you had to ask permission from a government agency, and that's kind of what I think about when you're describing, just going into the Yosemite Park. And if someone is not enrolled, when they go up to the gate and try to show their tribal ID, they're like, oh, what tribe are you? Do we recognize that you exist? How do you even get in? So I find it's one of those things that's super challenging. And our first Native Voices event 3 years ago, Carlos was here with us then, and Dr. Melissa Moreno, an ethnic studies professor at Woodland Community College. And she had shared that everything that has to do with Indigenous peoples is always connected to land and some type of physical resources. And so I think about that, especially with the delays in your federal recognition requests and the effort that's been going on for, longer than some of the people watching have been alive. The connection to Yosemite and the land and the resources. So that's just something I wanted to throw out there. But we have additional questions, and I know that we are kind of running low on time, but there's a question about what is the position of the speakers on the colonialist construct of the blood quantum issue? Now, some people may know what that that question is. So I know we have a wide audience. Maybe Tommy, you could describe what is, if you're open to this, what is that construct of blood quantum or blood quotient? And then if everyone's open or anyone's open to answering how you feel about that.
Well, yeah, so I referenced it a little bit in the part that I read in my book, but it had to do in the Virginia colony with the idea of not giving people rights if they had a certain amount of native blood. Of course, they weren't, they were just thinking like if this person has a native mother at that time, but they created the idea of blood quantum was to eventually, or it was to erase us. It was to eventually have us not be able to consider ourselves native, and you see it playing out in different tribes in different ways. My own son can't enroll in our tribe because even though my dad's basically full, he's got this little bit of. He called me up a couple of years ago because I was asking about my son getting enrolled, and he works for the tribe now, and he said the way I got it figured out. This is just an example to tell you how complicated it can be. He said, the way I got it figured out, and my dad's an engineer, so he was really working the math on this. He said, you're 3/64 short of a half. And so this is what was stopping us from being able to enroll our son in my tribes, because we have a quarter blood quantum requirement. We have, a little bit of German and a little bit of Lakota blood, and this makes it so my son can enroll, and this has deep impacts, across nations and people, the way people think of themselves as native people. If you can't even enroll in your own tribe, what are you going to do with your children? What are you going to tell your children? And of course, the answer can't be let everybody in, because you have all these pretendians and people who want to do it for the wrong reasons. They want to consider themselves native for the romantic, whatever reason. There are reasons why we need to safeguard who can be considered, but we're not really given sovereign rights in the same way that we should. We're not really considered nations in the way that we should be considered nations. A lot of times we hear people talk about members, like it's a membership, like we're a gym, like it's a gym membership. We're supposed to be like citizens in a nation, and you don't hear anybody talking about other. You can have a dual citizenship in Spain and Italy, and nobody's going to ask you a question about blood. But it's because they generated this blood quantum idea to erase us, and the legacy of that still lives on today.
Yes, Indigenous people are our blood degrees are measured in the same way that horses and dogs are, and no other ethnic group is measured in that way. Carlos, did you have anything you wanted to add about that blood quantum issue?
Yeah, it's a crazy little thing, with that blood quantum, and we're roundhouse people, so I was lucky enough to find my wife of 25 years. That's actually Mountain Maidu from Lake Almanor, which was Big Meadows before they flooded the Maidus out. And now my kids are Miwuk and Maidu descent, and then where she comes from, and then of course where my family comes from. And with the blood quant that I have, and however much measurements, I don't know fractions. And I never really thought about it like that. I just knew that when I met her, that we were going to, she was the one. But at the same time, we had that connection because she was a dancer, I was a dancer. Our families knew each other. I don't know if it's if you can't really tell who you're gonna fall in love with, but at the same time, nothing just should be measured up like that. As for a means of who you feel you are. You know you are. You know your heart feels good about who you are. You know, um, but another thing, my daughter, my daughter's um, significant other, maybe they get married one day, and you know who that is. So, you know, Leland, he comes from up north. So, and they've been courting each other since they were 10 years old, just because of dance families and stuff like that. So you really can't tell what's going to happen. You can't predict the future. It is the circle that we're in, and whoever they fall in love with is up to them. And whether it be native or not native, blood, whatever it may be, native ethnicity from a different place, and I can't tell them how to live and how to be, but this is the way that we choose, and this is the way that we stay close to the fire and continue to live the way that we live. And that's all I could say to that, but as for the numbers, this just is the way that we know, so I don't know. I'm not the fraction guy. I don't know that, I really don't.
Thank you. For myself, just like how Tommy said his son, can't enroll, my daughter can't enroll. And issues, Indigenous identity is super complex. And if you don't fit someone else's stereotype, or you're dealing with people who engage in ethnic fraud is a real thing, and it happens at a lot of universities and campuses as well, or someone claiming identity and heritage, but without being aware of political or cultural, issues or things with their nation. I do have another question, but Uncle Bill, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, it's a complicated thing. And, it's something the government, as Tommy was saying, it's a way to eliminate Indians or tribes. That if you have this blood quantum, the way I've always seen it and the way I understand it is when you marry someone, my children say, marry someone. Well, they're family, and their children. So we look at it with our tribe as being descendants of those people that were here before the treaties were ever signed, before the Americans ever came. If you're a descendant of those people, then you're eligible. Government doesn't see it that way. Other tribes don't see it that way. I was talking to a friend at a conference that I went to. He was full-blooded Indian, as far as that goes, but it wasn't all one tribe. And he had to go with his mother's tribe. And his mother was only half of blood degree of that tribe. It made him a quarter. To be a member, you had to be half. So here he is, full-blooded, but no longer can't be a tribal member. So that's kind of the issue that comes up with that. And it has to do about coming together with your culture. In this day and age, it's hard for the young people to take the time to really understand that culture or ceremony. Everybody wants to do ceremony, but to be able to do that, sometimes you have to go through your trials. You have to take the time to go sit up on the mountain and be quiet. Understand those spirits. And in this world now, it's like, well, how do I have time to do that? You have to make time, is what I tell everybody. If you really want to do it, then make time. Don't tell me, oh, I don't have time. Oh, I can't do that. I can't take off for work for a week or so I can go do that. But those are the things for us being able to do ceremony. So everything is different now. It's based on making a living because we don't have the land to provide for ourselves anymore. That was never a thing that was necessary in the past. And I look at some of the other people in this country, other races, everything, they're struggling too. So, but they're never asked, what's their blood quantum? If they say they're black, they're black. If they say they're Asian, they're Asian. You know, they say they're Hispanic, they're in, you know. They don't have to show a blood quantum. Natives do. And so that's what's wrong about it. And the sad thing is many of the bigger tribes, they've bought into it also. So they would ignore their own relatives because they're not enough Indian. They don't have that blood quantum, you know. You know, like your thoroughbred horse, you know. So it's kind of that way. You know, I've been fortunate to be around Native people my whole life and have some understanding, not so much the ceremonies until I got older, because it was illegal when I was younger, when I was little. So many of our people, if they did it, they had to hide and do it. And so it wasn't something you could do every day. And we had to keep quiet about certain things. Didn't want to talk about it around other people. And I don't feel that way anymore. I'll talk about it wherever I want, whenever I want, you know, because it's important to share that, you know. No need to be ashamed anymore. No need to be afraid anymore. No need to hide anymore. You know, it's time for Native people to stand up and say, yeah, this is who I am, whether you like it or not. Not to be obnoxious about it, but, you know, it's, you know, you got to have that in your heart to say, this is who I am. You either like it or you don't. I like me. So, you know, I like being Indian. You know, I like who I am. It's very important just for your own sanity, you know. Talk about mental health issues. Why do Indians drink so much? Why do they do this? Why do they do that? Why don't they get up and go do something? Well, it's hard. I understand it from both sides of it. I made it a point to know. I know what it is to get up. You go out and find a job, but then you don't get a chance to do the things that make you who you are. But you have to make time for that, even though you have to go out and make a living in a different way. You can't just go out and gather anywhere anymore. So, you know, the things that just feeling good about who we are as Indigenous peoples, whatever the term somebody wants to use, you know. You know, I guess we're called Indians because Columbus got lost, I guess. I don't know. But that's why we're Miwuk. We're people, we're human beings. That's what we have to remember. It's not about you're this tribe or that tribe. You're a human being, as we all are. And when all human beings start acknowledging other human beings, we might be in a good place. We've gotten a little away from that in the last 4 years, but again, it's time to focus on that. Treat your family good. Treat the people you meet good. So, but the blood quantums are, now I guess if I was full blood, I might have a different view, but there's always that option. I would hope that I wouldn't. I would still want to take care of my relatives. So,
Thank you, Uncle. One of the last questions for the night is, how do you reconnect to your culture or language without it being passed down from a living family member?
I could answer a little bit, is that when it comes to your culture, it comes from the earth and it comes from that spirit. That Holy Spirit, however you might see that. So you make the connection there. Your ancestors will come and help you, but you have to make the time to sit and listen to them. You can't just get wound up in chasing the dollars around and say, yeah, I'll get to it. I'll get to it later. And you can do that wherever you're at. I know that my grandparents and great grandparents, they're still urging me to move forward. They want me to keep doing what I'm doing. I know that. It's not just a belief, it's in my heart. So that's how people can find their culture. It's not about, oh, I didn't have anybody to tell me. I didn't have anybody tell me a lot about it either, but I've learned a lot by going to different places, sitting on the earth, listening to that spirit. And so everybody can do that, but they have to have it in their heart. It's not something of just the mind, it's of your whole being. So that the culture is there. You just have to reach out and touch it. How to make your instrument, how to make your regalia. If you sit and you pay attention, you'll learn these things. How did Carlos learn the language? He worked at it. He's worked at it. He spent his life doing that. He didn't necessarily have someone to tell him everything he needed to know about it, but he's worked at it. I know that. I've been watching him for over 25 years. I was working with him before him and his wife got together. It's been a while. So I've watched him, I don't tell him to go and say, hey, Carlos, you ought to do this, you ought to do that. I just watch what he does, and it makes me happy. So that's part of that culture. It's within you. You just have to make the connection with it. And it's good to have someone to guide you in that. But when I do things, I never tell people how they should do it, or that I know what they should do. I just tell them, well, maybe I could help you find that. I'm just a helper. I don't have all the answers either. So that's how we do that. If people like what you do, then they'll come talk to you about it. If they don't, they won't talk to you about it. You just do what you need to do as a human being to make that connection with your ancestors. They'll show you a lot of things that you never thought of, but you have to take the time. Oh,
Oh. And the last question is, what can colleges and universities, and I'd like to add just schools also, right? What can colleges and universities and schools do to support you and your youth?
I'd like to say a couple of things. You know, for many years they've studied the native people, and they have some answers. You know, we have some questions, but at the same time, um, when you attain these, or you gather these, or you collect these things, you know, like UC Berkeley or whatever, UC Davis or whatever it may be, you do it with a good heart. You know, um, give you an example. When you go down to UC Davis and you want to look at the baskets, and there's about 90 Miwuk baskets down there, you make it to where it's accessible, and the experience that you got when you first encountered these things and you found them and you said, wow, how beautiful they are, let's study them and this and that. But then truly understand that there's a home for all of these baskets and they belong with the people. These baskets are alive, blood, sweat, and tears, gathering times, songs were sang for these baskets, medicine was shared, you know, food, nourishment, so many things were done to make these baskets, you know, and to acknowledge that they're alive is very important. And some people may comprehend that, but some people are like, well, what do you mean, you know? And, you know, just like Bill's saying, yeah, it'll come to you. If it's meant to be, it'll come to you. If that song's meant to be, it'll come to you, you know. Bill told me years ago, I said, well, what about the song? And he says, but how does that song make you feel? Does it work for you? Does it feel good? Does it, you know, feel like it's going to be useful to you to pray for somebody or sing for somebody? And I thought about that and I said, man, you know, if it was shown to me, then yep, what he was saying was just what I needed to hear. You know, there's many things down there at Berkeley. They would love to come back and repatriate and bring things back to our people. So when you colleges, there's a lot of things that they do have, and I hate to talk, you know, a little bit mukbuku, bitter face, you know, about some of these things, but it has to be said sometimes, and that, you know, let the old timers come home. You know, you guys, you know, did what you did to it, you know, did and studied and this and that, and there's a lot of things that are down there that you can learn from, and we can learn from each other. But at the same time, there's also respect. There's a respect to these things, and so Columbia College has archival stuff that has to do with language and audio recordings. That's good stuff. Share it with everybody. You know, it didn't cost nothing to get it. You know, share it with whoever you can. Any college, university. You know, there's a lot of good resources there, and you know, too bad we have to go to these places to relearn or to do it. But it's part of the world that we live in, and it's a good thing to learn and to educate yourself and learn from a different aspect or a different perspective. You know, so you know, I'm still learning too at a young age, and the university, school systems, everything. We're now in a time where they passed that AB 738, you know, and there was many tribes involved in that. That's allowing the tribes to be a part of creating that curriculum and that history, so they could tell their side of the story. And much respect and love to the Chuntea people and the Mariposa side people, and you know, and I hope they get that recognition because they have so much to offer. And that's not about that so much, but they just have so much knowledge of self, and so many people could learn from them, and they could teach people, and their young people will be able to grow up and learn from that too at the same time. And their elders, and all elders in a sense, will set a precedence or a pathway, so we have somewhere to follow. You know, so all these educational systems out there, be mindful where you got these things, but also don't take it for granted that you have and been blessed in that way, and share as much as you can with all the people. And then in return, maybe the native people will come and share with the people that want to learn with a good mind and a good heart, and they'll do that too at the same time. So yeah, the school systems are good, It's now time to have the history be told from the First Nation of people, the first indigenous people of this land, from this ancestral land, and this is our walk, and this is what we're doing right now, and we're teaching within, and if people choose to share, that's good too at the same time, and just share with a good heart, and be open your mind to new things, and never forget that the elders did so much for us and allowed me to even to be able to sit here and share some words. So,
Oh, thank you, Carlos. Bill and Tommy, do you have any things you'd like to add about ways that colleges, universities, or schools can help Native youth?
Got to figure out which unmute button to push here. Yeah, we've had some struggles with different branches of University of California, keeping the human remains. It's a lot over human remains and artifacts, and we're still fighting that today. Start being upfront and honest when you go out and the archaeologists go out. Don't just go out and try to sneak things through. And like for us, if we're not recognized, they don't figure they have to talk to us. Good thing we got Tuolumne to back us up. We call Reba and say sick her on them. And so that's our relatives over there helping us. But one of the things over the years, people want to get information from the people, our elders, in the past. And these elders, they share information. And so all of a sudden, these professors and scholars or whatever, they become experts. They know it all. And they never acknowledge the people they got the information from. If they do, it's a rare occasion. I only know one person that, and I have a lot of respect for her because of it. That's Kat Anderson. She wrote, I think it's Tending the Wild. Every presentation she makes, she acknowledges where she got that information. And, that's what the universities need to do. It's not so much that they need to teach us how to be Indian. They have to stop and listen and learn, and maybe they could talk about some of the true history, particularly here in California, because that's what I know most about. So I can't talk about other places that much. But, the true history of what happened when the Spanish were here, the missions, the true history of when the Americans came and what happened then, Get the true history. Don't be ashamed of it. See, it's like natives didn't want to talk about their history and who they were because they were shamed. That goes for the non-Indians too. They're ashamed of their ancestors because of what they did. Or they're just ignorant of exactly what happened, or they don't want to face it. So those are the things, not to just look at the negative things, but educate people of how we lived here, how we survived, having respect and honoring the earth the way that our people did. They had to, because that's how they survived. They didn't go out and dig up gold and drill oil wells and, all the fracking and everything that goes on that destroys the earth. They didn't do that. And it's important that people understand that if they want to survive, all races want to survive on this earth, they need to start getting that understanding. You can't just keep taking and not giving anything back to the earth. You know, the universities need to do that. But I have to say, the university isn't the answer to all the education. I'll go back to Carlos here because I know where he was at when he was working with me. He had a hard time with English and the writing. Well, he had no problem with learning the Miwuk. I always laugh at that, you know. I feel good about that. You know, I know he struggled with trying to figure out English and how all that went together. But when it came to Miwuk, he does pretty darn good, you know. So that's another reason, you know, that good feeling about things. And so the universities aren't the only answer to education, but they could help in, you know, just with this federal acknowledgement. You know, how could they help in that? I'm not sure. It depends on if they're willing to do it or not. They say, oh, well, we can't get involved in all of that. So, you know, we could share information with them if they would use it in the right way. So some of our elders were taken advantage of that way. These so-called scholars and anthropologists, they all were the experts. They got all their information from our elders, our ancestors. They wrote books, made money on it. So that's why some of us tell people, hey, how do you do that? You tell them, well, when I write my book, you can read it, you know, if you want that information. So it's kind of that way. That's there's not a lot of trust for a lot of people. So it's something that I would say maybe should sit down and actually take the time to talk to the people about what is it you want to share? What are we going to do with this? If there is an excavation, you know, make the tribes part of it. If they want to be, if they say, hey, that's a burial, stay out of it, stay out of it. We have a problem going on right now, you know, that they knew there were burials there. They went and dug anyway. You know, they found bones, human remains there. They were trying to get a permit to go dig again. So these are things that universities and colleges need to think about. You know, those, you know, we don't go in their graveyard and you know, their cemeteries and dig people up. They should think about that and be willing to sit down and talk about it. I don't know an anthropologist that doesn't think they're an expert and they know more than the Indians do. So that's kind of where change can start and a trust can be built. You know?
Thank you for
So
sharing.
I think I would say thank you to Columbia for allowing this to happen so we can share these things. That's a good step forward. You know, we're able to talk about the things that affect our lives and give some understanding. So that's a good thing, you know. And that's the way things should be done, is take time to actually have an understanding of it. That doesn't mean they should try to become Indian, but you know, they could have some understanding and respect and honor those traditions. You know, just honor us as human beings. That would be a good thing.
Thank you, Uncle. Tommy, we'll take your response, and then I'll do a small, like, little closing. And Uncle Bill, were you still open to sharing a song to close the night out with?
Sure.
Okay. So Tommy, did you want to share anything before we close it up?
No, I mean, I think Carlos and Bill both brought up a lot of valid reasons why there's distrust with institutions of all kinds. I think the school that I went to for my MFA was the Institute of American Indian Arts, and it's an art school that's been around for many decades in Santa Fe, and they have the MFA program that I went to is you can do it remotely, which I did it back in from 2014 to 2016 when remote learning was like, what did you do? And now everybody knows what it is. So that's an institution that is run by Native people, and it's a really, for a lot of different art forms, you can go to get your undergrad or your master's degree. I would just, I guess, plug seeking out education there because it's a cool institution.
Thank you, Tommy. Well, I'm not sure if we're still at like the 120 mark of attendees, but whoever's still with us tonight, we've been on for, I guess, 2.5 hours. So I know many of you haven't eaten dinner, and many of the, so we do want to wrap it up and try to be kind of on time. We're a little bit late, but we've really appreciated having all of you logging on. But most importantly, I really appreciate Bill and Carlos and Tommy for giving up part of your evening and the time it took to even just prepare and just showing up and being here. As we know, our educational systems don't always create space to hear, and we usually hear from anthropologists and other people like you've mentioned, Bill, and it's rare that an institution will invite Native people to speak for themselves and share from their own views, and in such a way that's not like death by PowerPoint, or traditional Western ways. And so each one of you have shared your presentation with your own personal style, your own traditional way, your own art form, and what you feel comfortable with. And so we really appreciate you being here and being willing to share with our local and broader community. I know we have people logged on from all over the state, and not just at Columbia College, and not just students and professors, but many community members and people down at Stan State as well, and other institutions. So your words and your time and your effort is greatly appreciated by all. So thank you all for being here. And if you do have questions, you can email me, beavers@yosemite.edu, and I can try to field some of those continued remarks or comments and get them in touch with Tommy and Carlos and Bill. And so I'd like to turn it over to Uncle Bill. He's gonna, end the night with a song, just how we started it with a song. It's kind of more of a traditional way. Songs are prayers. And so that's just another way of indigenizing the Academy, which is awesome. But thank you all for being here. So Bill, anytime you're ready, you can take it away.
Okay, I got to find my way around this computer. So I'm going to sing this song. Sometimes when things are being recorded, you have to be careful what songs you choose. People get upset. Why are you allowing that to be recruited? So I want to share this song that it comes from this place, Ooten, the place of the first people. Back in that time where the beings were part human, part animal. And we had this is about the white-headed eagle. The white-headed eagle is our grandmother. So it's real simple. Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh. Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh. Ama, ama, Opa, opa, yo. Opa, opa, yo. Opa, opa, yo. Ama, ama, oh, ama, ama, yo. Ama, ama, oh. Opa, opa, yo. Opa, opa, yo. Opa, opa, yo. Ama, ama, oh, ama, ama, oh, ay, there you are.
Oh, thank you. All right, well, this is the time that, we would normally be ending everything. And if we were in person, we'd be kind of exiting stage left. So thank you again for everyone being here. And I hope you stay safe and the power lasts. But thank you again to our speakers for making time in your schedule, and for all of you who are still watching.